lot of guys that we've interviewed, but a lot of them don't live up to how decorated our guest is today, because not only are the championships just literally falling off the page, but on top of all of it, I think we might be speaking with the greatest big man in the history of professional wrestling. But some of those accomplishments, a 3-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion, a 3-time IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, and a 2-time All Japan Triple Crown Champion. This is the one and only Big Van Vader. Thank you so much for joining the two-man power trip of wrestling.
Well, hey, thank you very much. That's a great introduction. I appreciate that. Look forward to talking to you guys.
Oh, Mr. Vader, it's our pleasure. We definitely are thrilled to be joined by you. Like I said, one of, if not the best big men in the history of professional wrestling. I know my co-host will preach on about that all day long. We're longtime fans of yours, but I guess the best place to start is we've seen you attending DDP and DDP Yoga camps and seeing how you really kind of started the transformation and are getting on the right foot when it comes to your health. But how are you doing here as we speak in 2017?
So you're alluding to my heart and my health problems. Is that where you want to go here?
Just overall, just how are you doing? We saw the pictures of you down with DDP, and obviously he's done a great job helping guys transform their lifestyle. So just overall, how are you feeling overall?
First of all, Dallas Page is going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame this year. So he's not just a good wrestler, he's a great wrestler. And he's got multiple world titles. I think he's got 3 world titles on the WCW also. So he's had a great career, and he's become a really good friend of mine. He reached out to me and made his home and his knowledge of diet and his knowledge of this DDP Yoga and available to me, and as a format to lose weight, which is become very important to me. I was about 400 pounds when I got the diagnosis of the congestive heart failure, and since that time with DDP's help, with it's not just about how much you eat, but it's what you eat and the quality of food, and there's just some real simplistic lessons to learn, and I would really advise everyone to figure out exactly what you're buying at the store, and it's not really quality food what they're selling us, and it causes illnesses and things of that nature. So I've cleaned up my diet, a great deal, and I eat much simpler now, and I've lost some weight. I'm down about 30 pounds, and I've done that, and it probably would be considered a relatively short time. I'm working out not only with the yoga, but in the gym and riding a bike and doing more and more cardio as I'm able to, as my cardiovascular conditioning continues to get better, and my heart continues to get stronger. So I feel very fortunate to have a friend like Dallas, and I couldn't endorse his product more. The product of DDP Yoga is wow. It's off the chart. It's just I've been working out since I was 7, 8 years old, and there's really nothing that compares to it. It's stretching. It builds muscle. It does all. It really does a lot for you, and not to mention that if you're dieting, it can really be a tool to lose weight. So it's a workout that you could do more than once in the course of a day, and it's not the where the weights and running and squats are really hard on the body, where the yoga is actually good for the body. So it's not like you're going to be sore and broke down after a workout. You'll be tired, but once you get over that, you're able to control that in your conditioning. You could do this 2 and 3 times a day, and there's a lot of great success stories that Cage has on his website and things of that nature. Guys that have lost, 100 pounds and 80 pounds and 200 pounds, and so, I found a new friend in Dallas, and he's at the top of my list as far as people go. So I think that's it's. Well, go ahead. Let's go on.
That was an excellent answer, and I think we're all very invested in your journey. And to hear that you've lost 30 pounds already that's excellent, and it's really a testament to both your strength and Dallas's teaching. And we've heard, directly from Dallas. We've had him on in the past. Just how great DDP Yoga is. I mean, in the wrestling world now, DDP Yoga is almost second nature with all the guys he's helped transform, and it's just so awesome to hear that you're doing so well with it. But I mean, I guess that begs the answer, and I know you've alluded to it on Twitter before, but does that leave one big Vader bomb left in the old tank of Big Van Vader?
Well, actually, my booking sheet this spring, or yes, March, April, May. That's springtime, isn't it? So, in the upcoming months, I've got several matches booked as a wrestler, and then I've got other bookings where I'm just coming as signing autographs and watching. But March 10th and 11th, I am wrestling both of those nights, so that'll be my first test since the diagnosis. My first 2 wrestling matches since the diagnosis, and now I'm anxious to see how things go. So, wish me luck.
I feel sorry for whoever those poor saps are going to be March 10th and 11th with that Big Van Vader coming straight at them. But I think that's a cool place to kind of transition to the wrestling career. And you had such a unique look, such a unique style. We all remember the headgear. We all remember everything about Big Van Vader. But what was it about your aggressive style you think that really stood out to you when your opponent looked across the ring and literally you could basically see the teeth chattering because they knew they were going to be in for one kind of an ass whipping?
Yeah, I actually heard that people are some of the television talent, let's put it that way, that for the WCW they would see their name next to mine, and they would not only leave and not wrestle, but quit wrestling. Leon, you ran 3 of them off tonight, and I said, "What do you mean I ran 3 of them off?" They said, "Yeah, they were going to wrestle you in 3 of the television matches, and they all 3 left." So I used to get kidded about that quite a bit, but I don't know. Here's a when I came into the business, there was a guy that was named Stan Hansen, and he's a Hall of Fame in his prime. There was another guy named Bruiser Brody, and I wrestled both of them when I was very early in my career. And, they just, let's face it, they beat the hell out of me. And so it was from that, and then there was a third guy, another big guy, a legendary big guy, a guy named Jerry Blackwell. And they were all at the AWA where I was wrestling, and so they didn't really have, many people did, there just wasn't a long list of wrestlers that they could go against. I mean, Jerry was 400 pounds, Stan was huge, Brody was, 6'5", 330 pounds. So me being a big kid and a football player and rough, and I could take what they were dishing out, and they took advantage of me, I think. And looking back on those days, and I think that's as I got into wrestling, as I became, a bigger name and more experience, and I kind of, in other words, how I was brought up is how I thought these guys were brought up. So I don't know if I'm making much sense here, but in other words, it was kind of like, hey, you're young, and it was good enough for me, and it worked for me. So I let these guys know that there was a price to pay to get in the ring with me, and you needed to be prepared.
Absolutely, yeah. We saw last year when Stan Hansen got inducted into the Hall of Fame. We saw you out there, and it was quite the sight. Vader time was definitely going on. But one guy you mentioned there that I think does not get even slightly the bit of credit that he should is Jerry Blackwell, and nobody talks about Jerry Blackwell anymore. But kind of share some memories about Jerry Blackwell if you can, because if he hit that splash on somebody, you would not get enough, and that is for damn sure.
You see the man from Stone Mountain. I don't really remember all of that, but he was about 6 foot and 460 some pounds, and big guy, not very tall, and maybe 6 foot is being pretty gracious in terms of height wise. He might have been shorter than that, 5'10", 5'9", and then just a really big super heavyweight. And surprisingly, with carrying the 460 pounds, he was able to drop kick and move. And I obviously me being around these three legendary agile big men. Stan was probably 320, 330. And he had a resting heartbeat in the 30s, and he could wrestle all day. He could go half hour Japanese style, and same with Brody, and the same with Blackwell. Surprisingly, Jerry's matches were not just short squash matches. He put in time. So I think it was good for me to come up around those three quality big men, and I learned a lot. I befriended them and wrestling against them and talking to them and picking their brain. It was a great place for me to start out with those three guys there.
I think of Big Van Vader obviously is the best big man of all time, without a doubt, period. But you think of your time in Japan, whether it be, Pro Wrestling Noah or All Japan or New Japan, and you made such a mark over there. The first Gaijin IWGP champ, destroying Inoki, the riot over there. Can you just talk about, your awesome career in Japan? Because so much of the allure, so much of the legend, you did so many crazy things over in Japan.
That night I was scared to death. I had been wrestling in Europe and had my wife and my son over in Europe, and I got a call from actually Baba, and Baba wanted to bring me over for the Christmas tour. I had got an offer for X amount of dollars and 5 weeks work, and I got that through a gentleman by the name of Nick Bockwinkel. I think Nick's passed on now, so may he rest in peace. But Nick and I had, Nick had, and I had spoke, and I said, hey, if you got an opportunity, I handed them some tape or some photos, and if you ever got a chance to talk to Baba, if you can give me a tour over there, I'd like to try to break in. And so he had done that, good to his word. He had done that, and it was actually at just before I was getting ready to go from Europe to Japan for Baba. A guy named Masaha Tori had came with it. And apparently Masa Saito, who was a booker for Inoki, he had been looking for me and had been trying to call me at my old number, my old sending mail and stuff like that to my old address, and I was obviously in Europe, so I wasn't able to contact with him, and he was going to book me with Inoki. So as basically I was getting on the plane to go over for Baba, and by the time I got off the plane in Japan, Inoki had cut a deal with Baba, and I guess the money of it was transpired that Saito had told him that, hey, he's the big guy of the future, he's the guy we want. And the last thing that they wanted to do was have Baba get another big guy, because they had Hansen, they had Brody, they had Race and Harley Race and DiBiase and Snuka and Steve Williams, and so that had I gone over to Baba and got behind all of those great named wrestlers, who knows how this thing would have turned out. So what a stroke of luck for me to I got off the plane, and instead of going to Baba's company, I went to Inoki's company, and obviously things worked out extremely well for me. And it's, you start to think, so you think about that for a moment. I mean, let's face it, with Brody and Hansen and all those guys there, I mean, I may have never got the opportunity to show what I could do there. and things could have turned out substantially different. So I feel very fortunate in that regard.
Absolutely, and think about where your career ended up. I mean, the only wrestler to hold 3 world titles on 3 different continents simultaneously. So Big Van Vader was basically, taking over the world at that point.
Thanks, man. I think I had. Did you just say it? 3 world titles on 3 different continents at the same time?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and I was counting them the other day. I thought it was 25 titles, not world titles, but 25, 27 titles in all. That would be Intercontinental titles, United States titles, tag team titles, stuff like that. So, but I think it was 27 titles in all, between Mexico and Europe, and that would be Otto Vance's company. The company I work for in Mexico, Carlos Maynes, his company, it was I forget what it was called, but it was a recognized world title.
UWA.
And then Big Otto's, what'd you call it? I'm sorry?
UWA in Mexico.
Yeah, Carlos Maynes' belt was a recognized world title at that time. I think there was 6 or 7 recognized world titles, or maybe it was 8, and back in the 80s and 90s. And, since that time, I don't know if Mexico's world title is still recognized. But Big Otto's title was the CWA was recognized back then. He had a company that, throughout Germany, throughout France, throughout Italy, and they did very, very well. And so between the Europe title and the Japanese title and WCW and New Japan and All Japan, and then there was Noah, and then everyone, they seemed to, you remember that shoot group that the UWFI in Japan?
Yep.
With Nobu Takada? I actually captured their world title at one point, and actually went through a tournament to get it, but so I added them all up, and it was something like 27, 28 titles, world titles, intercontinental titles, and it included those companies. So,
yeah, pretty awesome. And I remember in '92 at Great American Bash. I mean, beating Sting. That was one of the big highlights for me of your career. When you and Sting just had an amazing feud, epic feud with awesome chemistry. But I remember with the powerbomb, you beat Sting and become WCW World Champion, and boom, you're over in the States big time as well.
Yeah, I was, Harley Race was my manager then, and it was, what an advantage for me, because Harley was an 8-time world champion and basically a walking encyclopedia of knowledge. And for me to say, Harley, what do you think about this finish? And what do you think about I'm going over to Japan? Can you give me a hold? I mean, it was such an advantage to have him as your manager, because he could show you a hold, he could call a spot for you, or he could, if you gave him a spot, he would make it right. So, well, yeah, that sounds good, but why don't you do it this way? Come at it from a different angle, and just invaluable. Harley Race, he was a great wrestler, and in my mind, maybe even a better coach. And I know he's been coaching for a long time there in Missouri, and then I understand he's moved to school to St. Louis, closer to the airport now. So, but yeah, Harley Race is one of the all-time greats for sure. And for me to be tied up with him like that, it was just invaluable. So.
Definitely, Harley Race, one of the greatest of all time, and I kind of alluded to the Sting matches. I just remember Great American Bash '92, Starrcade '92, Super Brawl '93. I mean, awesome matches. Could you just talk about your chemistry with Sting? Because it seemed like you guys couldn't have a bad match.
Yeah, we never did. I don't think we ever did have a bad match. It was just they became degrees of good, and I've had some of the best matches I've ever had with Steve, and it just became pretty automatic for us. We didn't even have to talk. We'd just go out there and tear the house down. I think he genuinely he liked me and I genuinely liked him, and that chemistry came across. And we were trying to work hard for each other. I mean, but it certainly did pay off. We drew a ton of money, and but besides from Sting, there was a Mick Foley in that group in that time period, and I had some great matches with Ric Flair. And but that time period in the WCW was a good period of time for me, a very productive time. I had Harley as a manager, Dusty Rhodes as a booker, and you have all these great wrestlers and around you between Sting and Harley and Dusty, and it's just Foley and Borden. It didn't get any better than that. I mean, it's just everywhere you turned there was excellence around you. So going back to the AWA with Brody and Hansen and Blackwell, I certainly was a great beginning for me to have big men of that caliber, and then going over to Japan with Inoki and then the CWA in Mexico, and then finally hooking up with Harley and Dusty and Sting and Foley. I mean, it's for me, I've been very blessed to be surrounded by talent. Obviously, if you're working with talented guys and you try to, live up to what they're doing and even better, it's hard not to succeed. You have to really be a klutz not to pick up on everything that everyone's doing. Their habits. I mean, what made them good? What made Sting good? He was in shape. He went to the gym. And he was a student of wrestling. And so you become a lot of those same things that these guys were. And what made them good is now making you good. And I feel very fortunate to, have been able to go the places I've gone and wrestle with people. Be around all these guys. And when you continue on that deal, I mean, going over to Japan with Inoki and Fujinami and Choshu, and then that second group of guys, Muta and Hashimoto and Chono. I mean, I don't recall having many 5-star matches, but I did have a legitimate 5-star match with Muta.
Yeah.
And and I think I had one with Flair and a couple others that I thought were pretty good. But that one with Muta over in Japan stands out. It was some sort of a tournament. It was in the G1 Climax Series.
Yep.
If that means anything.
Yes.
And we were in, I think, the Sumo Palace. They were sitting on their. Anyways, we got done with the match, and the pillows they were sitting on for chairs, they started throwing them in the ring, and I thought, damn, that was a good match. What are these guys complaining for? The referee said, no, that's they only do that when the match is very special, when it's good and really beyond good. In other words, it was very rare for, I think it's the first time it had ever been done, where the people that came to watch the sumo wrestling, when they had a great sumo match, it happened once in 20 years where they would throw the pillows in. And it was to signify that was, a very rare, great match, sumo match. And so when we pulled off that match and the pillows started coming in, it was a big deal. It hadn't been done very often, so we were pretty proud of that.
Definitely, and that's an awesome match. But as I start to wind it down a bit here, I mean, the Muta match, obviously 5-star. You mentioned Flair having some great matches. But obviously, you worked with Hansen. You guys had some awesome matches. Misawa, Kawada, Kobashi, all these legends. Do you have a couple more favorite matches or maybe one that really sticks out more than others?
Well, obviously the match with Hansen, where we were in the Tokyo Dome, and it was, 90,000 people, and maybe more. It might have been the one that was 98,000 people. But, Stan had broke my nose early in the match, and then my eye popped out of the socket, and I shoved it back in and kept going. That was a hell of a match. I mean, I watched that and I say, that even I'll put myself over on that one. I thought that was 28, 29. It might even have been the 30-minute draw. I can't remember right now, but 30 minutes in front of basically 95,000 people, and you get your nose broken, and then your eye pulled out of the socket, and you shove it back in and keep fighting. And on my part, I got to give myself a good job on that one. And then the one with Muta, that was a great one. Some of my matches with Inoki over there. Kobashi and I had some great matches, and even Akiyama. I mean, I had some good ones with Shoshu. And there was just a ton of good wrestlers over there. I had a good match with Nobu Takada in that shoot fighting. We fought one time for about 27 minutes and for the world title. I think that's when I beat him for that shoot style world title, which was a different style. I mean, that was hard adapting because there wasn't. It was basically a knockout, and the pins didn't mean anything. So the psychology had changed drastically for me, and that was kind of difficult to catch on to at first. But and then of course coming over to America with Steve and Foley and Flair and HBK, Undertaker, and I had a few good ones. A little bit more, with the Undertaker being so big, it was harder to have because you couldn't. He was just so big, you couldn't press him. You couldn't, with a guy like Shawn and Steve, I could press him over my head and do a lot of things with a smaller guy, But tell you what, all in all, I've had a good career. I think it's been a Hall of Fame career, but I haven't got the call yet. So who knows? Maybe one day I will. That'd be fun. I have to admit it's when you look at people of my time, like Rikishi's a little bit younger than me, and then so is Kevin Nash, but two very good big men, that are already in there, and they're younger than me. So it's kind of, wait a minute, maybe I missed my turn there somewhere, but it's without question, it's a very elite club, very prestigious club to be in, and I hope one day to get in it. I really do, but it hasn't happened for me yet. So
I definitely think it's almost overdue at this point. I mean, no offense to Rikishi or Nash. Obviously, both have some great careers, but Big Van Vader, all those titles everywhere. Definitely think you kind of, well past it. Definitely deserve to get in there.
Thank you. You know what? But it is. It's a very elite club and very difficult to get in there, and I really do hope I'll get in someday because you have. Because I'm not going to sit here and act like it's not important, because it is to me. It acknowledges, you being, a top wrestler, something wrestling. Because initially I thought, hey, I'm Leon White, the football player. I mean, I was a high school All-American and a college All-American, 2-time, and I got drafted to the Rams, and we played in the Super Bowl. And I thought that's who I'd always be, Leon White, the football player. And wrestling is certainly, my first love now. And for me to say that's quite an omission because, I was a diehard football fan. I mean, I used to watch games and break down the offensive line play. And I knew how because, I had played on that level. And then as wrestling got more into my blood and, I live it. I live wrestling. I love it. And it's a way of life. So, but yeah, I'm definitely Leon White, the wrestler. It's, that has happened in my, and it's been that way for a long, long time. But
Yeah, I mean, it feels a little bit overdue. It feels like you definitely should be in, and especially as you really go through, like you said, 27 titles. When you really look at your career, not just 27 titles. It's like the IWGP champion, the Triple Crown champion. You're a tag champion, Noah, WCW World Champion. I mean, these are real deal world titles where you're carrying these promotions.
Yeah, that's pretty much the case for all the promotions I was in. During my until like at WCW. I mean, myself, Ron Simmons, Sting. During my period of time there, and I know WCW went on to great things when they were drawing those. When they got all that talent in there. I think between myself and Sting and a few other guys, we were carrying that company. And with Inoki, the IWGP, myself, Inoki, and a few other main eventers, we were carrying that company. And same with Bob, and the same with Noah, and the same with UWFI. In fact, UWFI, that group, I mean, I see what you're saying. I appreciate that. Thank you. And it's an honor that they rely on you because they know that you can deliver.
Yeah, and before I hit the big finish here, I just got to ask this one thing because you mentioned him a few minutes ago there, and that's The Undertaker. We talk about you being the best big man of all time, but obviously The Undertaker's had one hell of a career. You guys had some intense matches and some really just very, very all-time feuds, especially for that era of the WWF. And we didn't even hit the WWF. But before we finish it up with your legacy, just kind of synopsis the feud with The Undertaker and him being, another one of the greatest big men of all time. But really, like you said, he's a bigger guy. But how did you guys kind of clash together?
He was so much taller than me. He's 6'9", 6'10", and very, very big, very strong, very, very agile big man. And, like I said, for me to go out with HBK and tear down the house, or go out with, Sting and tear down the house, or Ric Flair, or an Inoki, or, a smaller wrestler, and have that 5-star match with those guys, Muta. And then, for me, it was like, well, hey, this guy's nearly 7 foot tall, and he's 300 and what? How heavy was Undertaker?
Oh, he was like 320 back then. Yeah,
320, 330, and it's just some things you couldn't do with a guy that tall and that heavy. You couldn't necessarily press him, and maybe Mark Henry could. But you couldn't, it was hard suplexing him. It was hard doing a lot of things because, again, I'm 6'3.5". I'm not that tall. I mean, I'm tall for the average person and stand out in a normal crowd. But when you're standing next to a nearly 7 foot tall, giant, and maybe he should be classified a giant. He's there. In my mind, there are, in wrestling, there are giants, and then there's super heavyweights, and then there's, big men, and of course, and then there's, there's other groups, other categories as well. But for the purpose of our conversation, like Big Show is definitely a giant, and Undertaker, to say he's a big man, well, sure, he's a big man, but is he a giant or is he a big guy, a big man? In the strictest sense of the word. So, like a Kane, he's kind of in the middle. He's 6'9", 6. He's as tall as the Undertaker, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, but I know this: the Undertaker, in my book, would be hard to beat, and I think, maybe in my prime, in the 90. 90, 93. I think in 93, I was the number one wrestler in the world by that Wrestling Observer award. And I don't think there's ever been no 400-pounder ever to get ranked that high to take the number one spot. And then, who else we haven't mentioned? Bam Bam. Bam Bam Bigelow. He was a great wrestler.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a 400-pounder. We were tag team champs for Inoki. and he was one hell of a partner, man. That was a good team. And my hats off to Mark Calloway. He's the Undertaker's is a fantastic wrestler, but above and beyond that, the longevity he's had. I mean, he's how many years has he been wrestling now at this point? You guys know?
Just as the Undertaker, he's going on almost 30.
Yeah, he's been very fortunate to have the ability to fight the one match a year, but still, I mean, that's like, are you kidding me? That's forever.
Yeah. Hey, and just so you know, you and Bam Bam were ranked 36 out of the top 100 teams of the PWI years. So obviously, we definitely recognize that.
But
there you go.
I appreciate the statement. And I do consider myself one of the best big men, and certainly probably the best super heavyweight. So I appreciate that very good. And I don't, in the early '90s, I don't know if maybe I was the best big man / super heavyweight in the business, but I appreciate you guys recognizing that.
What would you feel your legacy is in professional wrestling? Because we've hit it out of the park with what you've meant to the big man, to the business, but what does it mean to you for what you've left in professional wrestling?
I think myself, guys like myself, guys like Stan Hansen, guys like Bam Bam Bigelow. Hansen is one of the best big men in the history of professional wrestling. I think Bam Bam Bigelow is one of the best big men in professional wrestling. And I think Mark Calloway is, if not the best, one of the best big men / giants in the business. I think for me, I kind of fit in two categories where I'm a big man / super heavyweight, and where Calloway's a big man / giant. So there's all kinds of ranking. We're Big Show. I mean, he's a giant. Period. Andre was a giant. Period. There's like Yokozuna, where he would be. He would be a super heavyweight without question. I mean, he was. So the thing that I thought is, having been brought up with Brody and Hansen and Blackwell, and I kind of saw my role was, to be the big guy that could wrestle 30 minutes. And I made it a point for me to always be the guy getting up off the deck first, regardless. And if you watch some of my matches with Sting and Inoki into the later minutes, the 25, let's say this time after 20 minutes, whenever we would both be on the ground, you would see me getting up first. And I made it a point to do that. And I thought that any good big man worth his salt would not just wrestle the 5. And although sometimes matches do go short of 5 minutes and 10-minute matches, I made it a point to stretch my opponent out and not just win, but entertain along with that win. Take the match 20 and 25 minutes, and I on top of being able to put the time in, which is something I prided myself on, was the ability to drop kick and go up to the top rope and throw a moonsault and show things agility wise that 400-pound people just didn't do. And I think I achieved those two things very well. I was very representative in terms of, Leon, can you go 30 minutes tonight? Well, yes, I can. And, can you throw that moonsault tonight? Can you do this? And I did things that wasn't necessarily the norm for, a super heavyweight or, a man my size. And let's face it, my days in the WCW, I was 417 pounds. They billed me heavier than that, but, that was a legitimate weight. So I prided myself on those things. And And I hate the, I was asked, could you tell us about Stan Hansen? What would you say? Well, Stan wasn't just good for a big man. I hated that. It was good for anybody. I mean, you could compare Stan to Shawn Michaels. I mean, Stan doing 30 minutes over in Japan with somebody that's, 5 or 6 inches shorter than him and maybe 50 or 60 or 70 pounds lighter than him, and Stan being able to keep up with that guy for a half hour. That's talent. That's why, that's why he's a Hall of Famer. And, I growing up with Stan and really breaking in with Stan and Brody and Blackwell, that's the same thing that I prided myself on is that very same thing. And then, and even taking it a step further would be going into the moves that big guys just didn't do before me. And really not many since then. I mean, Bam Bam and I, it was kind of odd that, 2 400-pounders would come in and be able to drop kick and do those things, and then, not really many since then. So those 2 things. But you know what? I would, if you'd let me here, just kind of close this out. I've really kind of, I regret tweeting out. In other words, when I got diagnosed that, hey, Leon, you have a bad heart, and you have congestive heart failure, and we feel that your time is limited. You have maybe a couple of years left, and 2 years or less left to live. And I remember getting very angry and saying that this has got to be bullshit. I don't feel bad. I don't getting extremely angry. And just since that time, I remember when I got the news, I left the hospital. I got a ride over to the gym, and I rode the bike for a half hour, hard as I could, and then got off the bike and then got on the treadmill and walked, for another 15 minutes, pretty hard. And I mean, I was exhausted, but my heart felt fine. I said, now how can I do that if my heart's going to give out? And the doctor, in some of the ongoing appointments that I had with him, explained to me that, when you were tipping the scales at 400 and 420 and 25 pounds, that, a man that size and that heavy just isn't supposed to be able to push himself in a cardiovascular endeavor, no matter what it is, much past 2 or 3 minutes, because the heart is going to be strained because of the weight. So something I prided myself in, what I just got through saying, was, being able to push myself into the 15-minute mark and the 20-minute mark and even the 30-minute mark and beyond. I mean, I've done several 1-hour, matches. And so, but where someone like a Sting would be able to do that and not damage himself, they're saying because I was continued to go at a high rate, for longer periods of time, that's how, in a man my size, that's how I damaged my heart, and that the heart was basically worn out at this point, and that all the football days, when I'm talking about, at the end of a practice, I remember, the coach would be upset because we lost, and then we had a bad practice or whatever it was, but you would run a 40-yard dash for conditioning, and you'd run 10 of them, which was really hard, and you'd do so just with just a few seconds rest, maybe 15 seconds rest between each one, and then you'd say, okay, let's do another 10, because so and so said something, and then you do another 10, and pretty soon you're doing 40 and 50 of these things, and I certainly wasn't 400 pounds when I was playing football, but I was 320, 330. And this conditioning didn't do my heart any good either. So I kind of wished, I think in closing, I kind of wished I hadn't brought it up. I am continuing to wrestle. I am continuing And someone said, well, aren't you afraid? Why would you get a booking at this point when you've had this type of diagnosis? And I said, brother, what would you rather die in a bed at home or in the hospital, or would you rather die in front of 10,000 people having fun in the ring? So, if it's true, if this doctor isn't just totally full of shit, which that's what I'm betting on, and I should say these doctors at this point, that's my choice, and that's the way that's the way I decide to go out. I mean, if this thing's going to happen, I'd rather be in a ring anywhere than compared to sitting in a hospital room, in a hospital bed, sitting there like some sheep getting ready to be slaughtered. It's not who I am, and it's not the way it's going to happen with me. And I really believe in my heart that this thing isn't going to happen. I don't know if I'll live to be 80 years old, but I can tell you this 2-year diagnosis is just wrong. I'm going to prove it wrong. And I don't really care what they're saying. And so, we'll see what happens, I guess. And certainly there's no way around that. But I've got, I'm booked in Japan to wrestle, and I'm booked throughout America to wrestle. I've got other bookings to sign autographs, and if any of you guys want me at your show, I'll give the information to these guys, and you can call them and get an email and a phone number on me and give me a call, because that's something that's very important to me. Is that if it is my time to say goodbye and move on to what the next level is, whatever's next, then so be it. But I'm simply not going to go out like that, man. I'm going out fighting. I'm going out positive, and shit, man. Here's another thing too. If you're feeling sorry for me, don't be, man. Because I tell you what, I've lived a life that's, second to none. I've literally been around the world 10 times. I was a high school All-American and a college All-American, and I got drafted to the Rams, and drafted in the NFL and played in the Super Bowl. And I don't know how many world titles I have, 16, 18, 20 world titles, and 27, 28 titles altogether. I've had a 30-year career in wrestling, and I tell you what, it just, I've never missed a meal. I've never been without money, and in fact, most of my life I've had quite a bit of money. I was always smart with my money, invested well. So hey, you know what? If at 60, I don't have long left, then so be it. But don't feel sorry for me, man, because I've lived a great life, and I'm thankful for the time I've had. So, anyways, I appreciate you guys letting me ramble like that. I just.
Oh my God! No, I got to interrupt you for 1 second, Mr. Vader. I just have to say thank you so much for sharing that with us. It means more to us than you would ever imagine, because your story, your journey, where you're going, where you've been, and everything in between is wrestling, and we couldn't be any more honored that you just shared all that with us. We did not expect you to go down that route, but we appreciate that, and we wish you nothing but the best, because it's always going to be Vader's time.
It's important. Thank you very much for that. But the reason I said it, because like I told you in the beginning, I wished I had never tweeted it out. Maybe it's caused more trouble than it wasn't my intent to cause trouble. It was my intent not to go into hiding. I said, no, I'm not going to hide. This is what's happening. Hell, I'm going to talk about it, because keeping it in would do me more harm than letting it out like this. It's very healthy to be able to talk like this and be open about it. So now everyone knows, and there's no reason to keep it a secret. But you know what? If what I'm trying to say to everyone is that there's someone out there that has a diagnosis, either with their heart, or they're fighting cancer, or they're You know what? Some doctor has told them that, hey, you've got X amount of time left. Don't believe it. Fight the obvious. Ask questions. You know, I've learned so much by asking questions. And, you know, just like I said, Dallas Page, he taught me about food. He's taught me about losing weight. He taught me about this yoga. It's just tremendous. And then everybody is like, people are sending me because they know that I'm fighting. They're sending me, hey, Leon, have you ever tried this? Have you ever thought about doing this? And some of these ideas are just fantastic. And it's the accumulation of those little things. And it's the fact that I am fighting is that I'm learning more. And you know what? I may not beat this thing, but I'm going to stretch it out. And that's the bottom line, man. I'm going to take care of this. You know, and there's no way I'm going out into a year and a half from now. No way. So, anyways, guys, God bless you. And I thank you very much for this platform.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the